The first step into darkness. I had spent years preparing for this moment, yet nothing could truly prepare me for the terror of stepping onto North Korean soil. The moment my feet touched the ground in Pyongyang, I felt it. The suffocating weight of secrecy, of eyes watching every move I made. My heart raced, and every breath felt like it came from a different world. It was the start of an adventure I had always wanted, but never fully understood. I was here to report the truth, but I knew, deep down, that the truth would come at a cost. The last thing I remember before boarding that plane was the final conversation with my colleague, Elena. She was the one who had pushed me into this madness. Elena had been to North Korea before, but she had never dared go undercover like I was about to. I knew the risks, but the promise of seeing the world's most secretive nation with my own eyes was too tempting to resist. I had to know what lay beneath the facade they put on for the world. Remember, you're not just reporting for a story, you're stepping into a story that could cost you everything, Elena warned me as I packed the last of my gear. The world doesn't know what they're doing in there, and neither do you. So, don't trust anyone. Not even me. I brushed off her words, mostly because I didn't want to admit that she was right. It was hard to believe that a place like North Korea, which seemed so far away in every sense, could hold such power over people's lives. We arrived late at night, the sky pitch black and the cold wind biting through my thin jacket. I had my camera gear stashed under a pile of medical supplies, my cover for being here. I wasn't supposed to be a journalist. I was a medical volunteer. A friend of a friend of a friend had set it up, and the plan was simple: help with cataract surgeries and document life in one of the most isolated places on Earth. What I didn't expect was how quickly I'd realize the price of keeping up the act. The airport in Pyongyang was a ghost town. A few armed soldiers stood watch, and as my group moved through customs, I could feel the eyes of the guards drilling into my back. My passport was examined, my luggage checked, and a guard followed us as we were escorted to a bland, windowless van. We were not allowed to speak, not allowed to make eye contact. The silence was more terrifying than I expected. The ride to our destination felt like an eternity. As we passed darkened streets, I saw the occasional flicker of lights in the windows of government buildings. The only signs of life were the propaganda posters plastered on every wall. Kim Jong Un, the great protector of our nation, in bold red letters. I couldn't help but shiver, not from the cold, but from the realization that this place was nothing like I had ever imagined. I had expected oppression, yes, but not like this, not this heavy, suffocating control over every detail of life. This wasn't just a dictatorship, it was a system built on fear. The kind of fear that could break even the strongest minds. The first day inside the compound was surreal. The hospital where we were stationed was oddly clean, modern even, but everything had a sterile, forced feel to it. I could sense the eyes of the North Korean officials watching my every move. They assigned 2 Minders to stay with me at all times, ensuring I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, playing the part of a humble volunteer. I met Dr. Park, the head of the medical team. He was in his early 40s, and his calm demeanor made it difficult to read his intentions. He spoke to me in clipped sentences, never revealing too much, always polite but distant. I couldn't figure out whether he was just playing the part of a good doctor, or if he was hiding something darker behind his eyes. I had a sinking feeling I wasn't the only one hiding something in this room. The patients we saw were mostly elderly, their eyes clouded with cataracts. Some had traveled from distant villages just to get the surgery they so desperately needed. I saw them as human beings who had been silenced by a regime that kept them in the dark, literally and figuratively. It was heartbreaking to witness their gratitude, knowing that they had no idea what lay beyond the walls of their country. But it wasn't just the patients that haunted me. There was something more sinister lurking just below the surface. As I walked through the hallways, I could see the guards standing in every corner, the ever-present reminder that I wasn't in a place where I could act freely. I was a pawn in a game I didn't fully understand yet. The twist came just days into the mission. One evening, I was sitting in my room, reviewing footage from our last surgery, when I heard a knock on my door. I opened it to find Elena standing in the hallway, her face pale and worn. She had arrived in North Korea under the guise of a humanitarian worker, but I could see the fear in her eyes. She was here on business, and not the kind of business we had been briefed about. "They know," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They know who you are. They've been watching you since you landed." I froze. The room felt suddenly too small, the walls closing in on me.
How?
I managed to say, my heart pounding. "How do you know?" Elena looked around nervously, then whispered, "There's no going back, Lisa. They're already in your head. They're not letting you leave without a price." Just as I was about to respond, the door slammed open behind me, and a tall man in a military uniform stepped in. I didn't even recognize him. He was not one of our official Minders. "Time's up," he said with a cold smile. I was led out of my room, but this time I wasn't following the guards willingly. Something was wrong, more wrong than I could have ever imagined. The man's eyes burned into me, and I knew something terrible was about to unfold. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where secrets are revealed, and the stakes grow higher than ever. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for updates on the full episode. You won't want to miss what happens next. The Game of Shadows. I couldn't breathe. Every step I took felt heavier than the last. The soldier led me down the dark hallway with an eerie precision, his steps almost silent. Elena had disappeared before I could speak another word, swallowed by the unknown depths of the North Korean regime. I didn't know if she had been taken, warned off, or if she had just gone underground. All I knew was that I was now alone in a place where no one, absolutely no one, was ever truly alone. The man's grip on my arm tightened slightly as we rounded a corner. I could hear my pulse in my ears, the pounding rhythm almost deafening. We stopped at a door. It was plain, sterile even. Nothing about it gave away the nightmare that could be waiting behind it. He knocked twice, and a voice from inside responded in a language I had only half begun to understand. "Come in," the voice commanded, cold and sharp. The soldier opened the door with a swish, stepping aside. He didn't even look at me as I walked through. As I crossed the threshold, my eyes immediately locked onto a tall figure sitting at a desk at the far end of the room. The man was dressed in a sharply tailored uniform, but his face was unreadable. He didn't look up from the papers in front of him, yet I could feel the weight of his attention on me. "Sit down, Lisa," he said, as if he had been expecting me for a long time. I hesitated. This wasn't like any interview I had ever done. No polite introductions, no soft smiles, no pleasantries. Just a cold, commanding presence that made every part of me scream to run. But I had no choice. I sat. The man slowly lifted his gaze, his eyes sharp and calculating, like a predator studying its prey. His dark eyes seemed to pierce through every wall I had built in the past months. The room was silent for a moment before he spoke again. "You're asking the wrong questions, Lisa," he said. "The truth you think you came to uncover, you're not ready to hear it." My heart stuttered. How did he know what I was after? I hadn't said a word about my real mission, my reason for being here. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to steady as I replied, "I came here to help, to see the truth." But even I could hear the uncertainty in my voice. "You think you're in control, don't you?" he continued, leaning forward slightly. "You think that with your camera, your questions, your stories, you can change things here. But Lisa, this place doesn't change for anyone." His words hit like a slap, and for a moment, I couldn't even find the breath to argue. What had I gotten myself into? Before I could respond, the door behind me slammed open. 2 guards rushed in and grabbed my arms, pulling me up from my seat. "You will come with us," one of them said, his voice unrecognizable under the layer of authority it carried. I barely had time to react before they dragged me out of the room, my feet stumbling behind them. "Wait," I yelled. "What is this? What are you doing?" But the guards didn't even flinch. They moved with military precision, each step deliberate, as if I were nothing more than an object in their hands. They shoved me into another sterile, dimly lit room. It felt like a nightmare, the walls closing in on me as I was thrust into the cold, unforgiving space. A chair was placed in front of a table. One of the guards gestured for me to sit, and the moment I did, the door slammed shut behind me. For the next hour, I was interrogated. Not with questions, but with accusations. They had files on me, files that I couldn't explain, files that detailed every move I had made since landing in Pyongyang. They knew about my conversations with Elena, my interactions with the defectors, the people I had spoken to. They had anticipated my every move, and I was left powerless to hide anything from them. "Who are you working for?" they asked again and again, like a broken record. "What's your real mission here?" I tried to hold on to my composure, but each question felt like a jab to my ribs. Every lie I told seemed to fall flat. The weight of their gaze, the sense that they knew everything about me, made me wonder if I could ever leave this place alive. Just when I thought I couldn't take it any longer, the door opened again. This time, it wasn't a guard who entered, but Elena. Her eyes were red, her face pale, but there was something different about her. She had always been strong, always full of confidence. Now, she looked defeated. "Lisa," she whispered, as the guard stepped back, giving her space. "You need to leave. Now." "What's going on?" asked, my voice shaking. "They know everything," she said. "And if we don't leave now, they will make sure we never get out." My mind raced. What was she talking about? How did she know? The answer came too quickly. The man in the room, the one who had interrogated me, was already making plans to have us both detained. There was no way out unless we made a run for it, and even then, I wasn't sure we could escape the grip of this brutal regime. Cliffhanger. As I stood up, the door behind us slammed open again. More guards flooded into the room, surrounding us, their eyes locked onto us with a terrifying sense of finality. One of them stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his rifle. "You have 1 minute," he said, his voice cold, final. "Make it count. Don't miss the next move. Will they escape, or will they be caught in the inescapable grip of North Korea's oppressive forces?" Stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel for the next update. The escape that wasn't. The guard's hand rested on the rifle, but his eyes didn't move. He was calm, collected, as though he had seen everything before. But for me, it felt like time was crashing into me, crushing every thought, every hope I had. Elena's breath was shallow next to me, her panic almost palpable. She had always been the strong one, the one who could talk us out of any situation, but now she stood frozen, her eyes wide with fear. I could hear the sound of my heartbeat in my ears, thudding loud and fast. I glanced at the door, at the small window just above the guards' heads, but it seemed so far away now. The path to freedom, the escape we had dreamed of in the quiet moments before everything had gone wrong, felt like an illusion. We were surrounded. There was no way out. 1 minute, the guard repeated, his voice like ice, making me realize just how little time we had. I looked at Elena, desperate for an answer, but she was no help. Her eyes were darting around, searching for any opening, any way out. She met my gaze, and for a brief moment, we both understood. The plan we had, run, hide, get to the border, cross into China, was no longer feasible. The time had come to make a choice. We could try to fight, or we could submit and hope for mercy, though we both knew that mercy was a rare commodity in this place. "What do we do?" I whispered. Elena didn't respond immediately. She was still calculating, her mind working in overdrive. Then, as if some decision had been made, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. A tracker. "We run," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "We have one shot at this. And if we fail together." She glanced at the guard, then back at me, and I saw it in her eyes. Fear, yes, but also determination. She wasn't going down without a fight. The guard stepped forward. "Move," he barked. We had no choice but to comply. The 2 guards flanked us as we were herded down the hallway. The sound of our footsteps echoed in the silent building, like an alarm warning us that we were being led to our doom. Every corner we turned, every door we passed, felt like we were getting deeper into their trap. But Elena wasn't backing down. She had a plan, she always did. She had been waiting for this moment for years, and I could see it in her face now. This wasn't just about escaping. This was about getting to the truth. Elena was determined to expose everything she had seen, everything she had felt while undercover here. She wasn't just going to run. She was going to make them pay for what they had done. And I was going to help her. The turning point came when we reached a small, heavily guarded exit. It was the back door of the building, the one that no one should know about, the one that led to the forbidden zones of Pyongyang. Only, we didn't get far before one of the guards pulled out a walkie-talkie. "We need backup," he spoke in Korean, his voice clipped and cold. At that moment, I realized something I hadn't before. We weren't just prisoners here. We were assets, tools they could use, information they could extract. They wanted us alive because we knew too much. They needed us to stay alive long enough to feed them whatever it was they wanted to hear. And if we tried to escape, well, that would be the end of the story. The guard who had been following us suddenly grabbed my arm, and I was thrown off balance, stumbling forward into Elena. I looked back at her, but she was already shaking her head. This was it. The last shot at survival. I had a split second to make a decision. The backup guards were approaching fast. The small room we had been pushed into was narrowing, and with every second that passed, the exit was closing. "Run!" Elena shouted. And I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I bolted for the door, with Elena right behind me. We ran as fast as we could, but it was like the world was closing in. The guards' footsteps were pounding in our ears, closer with each passing second. We reached the courtyard just outside the building, where a handful of cars were parked. But before we could get far, I heard the sound of gunfire. I froze. Elena pulled me toward a narrow alleyway, and the world turned into a blur of motion and panic. We were ducking behind dumpsters, running through shadows, and hearing nothing but the sound of our breaths and the distant shouts of the guards. The air was thick with the smell of dust and gasoline, and I could hear Elena's voice urging me to move faster. We had to make it to the border. But even as we ran, something felt off. Something didn't fit. Why was it so easy for us to get this far? There was something about the plan that didn't add up, something I hadn't noticed before. Elena's plan was good, better than I had expected, but as the minutes ticked by, I began to feel the weight of doubt. Maybe it wasn't a simple escape. Maybe we weren't just running from the government. Maybe the government had wanted this. Just as I turned to ask Elena what the next move was, we heard a distant sound, too distant to be anything but deliberate. The sound of a helicopter. And it was getting closer. What happens next? Will Elena's plan lead them to safety, or is this all part of a bigger game that neither of them understands? Stay tuned for the next chapter. Subscribe now to follow the journey. The final choice. The sound of the helicopter grew louder, its blades cutting through the night air. Elena and I looked at each other, a sense of dread creeping into our hearts. The helicopter wasn't a rescue mission. It wasn't for us. We were in deeper than we had imagined. Our escape was never meant to be easy. The silence of the alley was interrupted only by the pounding of our hearts, our breaths ragged, as we tried to decide on our next move. "Elena," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "What if they want us to run?" Her face was pale under the dim light of the street lamp, her expression unreadable. She turned to me slowly, a bitter smile on her lips. "We don't have a choice now." She reached into her bag, her fingers trembling slightly as she fumbled for something inside. "This was never supposed to be easy, Lisa." I blinked. What did she mean? I had trusted her with everything. From the beginning, she had been the one to convince me this was the right thing to do. But now, she was saying something else. Was she hiding something from me? The helicopter's roar grew louder, and Elena started to pull me toward a nearby building. I tried to focus, but my mind was spinning. How had we gotten here? We were supposed to be two journalists on a mission to expose the truth. But it had all gone wrong. Too many twists, too many lies. And now, it felt like we were caught in the middle of something much bigger than we could have imagined. "We need to move quickly," Elena urged. Her grip on my wrist tightened, pulling me forward. I stumbled but kept my balance. The adrenaline coursing through me was both terrifying and exhilarating. We weren't just running from the authorities anymore. We were running from the truth. We reached the building and ducked inside, our hearts racing as the helicopter flew overhead. The sound was deafening now, a constant reminder that we weren't safe yet. Elena led us through a dark hallway, her eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. The air was cold, and the walls felt like they were closing in on us. "I don't understand," I said, my voice shaking with confusion and fear. "Why did you bring me here? What's the plan?" Elena stopped in front of a steel door, her expression hardening as she glanced at me. She didn't respond right away. Her fingers tightened around the door handle, and she took a deep breath. "I didn't think it would go this far, Lisa," she said quietly. "But you have to trust me. This isn't just about North Korea anymore. It never was." I stared at her, my mind racing. What was she saying? What had she been hiding from me? Before I could press her further, the door swung open, revealing a small room filled with computer screens and blinking lights. I saw people sitting at desks, their faces hidden in the shadows. Elena stepped inside without hesitation, and I followed, still reeling from her cryptic words. "This is it," she said, her voice now cold and serious. "The real mission." I froze in the doorway. The real mission? Was she talking about something else entirely? Had I been a pawn in her game all along? Elena turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "I've been working with them all along, Lisa." I felt my stomach drop. "Them?" I managed to choke out. "Who the hell are you working with?" Before she could answer, a voice cut through the silence. "Lisa, Elena, you both made it." I turned toward the voice, my eyes wide with shock. A tall man in a black suit stepped forward from the shadows. He was calm, composed, but there was something unsettling about him. His eyes were too calm, too knowing. "I'm Agent Park," he said, his tone cold and professional. "We've been monitoring your progress." My heart raced as I processed his words. Agent Park? Was he from the North Korean government? Or something else entirely? I had no idea who he was, but the look in his eyes told me that my life had just taken a turn for the worse. "You've been monitoring us?" I repeated, my voice trembling. "What is this? What do you want from us?" Elena stepped forward, her back straight as she addressed the man. "We're here to help, Agent Park," she said, her voice steady, but I could see the tension in her jaw. "We did what you asked. We did everything." Park's eyes flicked to Elena, then back to me. There was no warmth in his gaze, only cold calculation. "You don't understand yet, do you?" he said slowly, as if explaining something to a child. "You're both deeper in this than you realize. And you're here because we need your help." "Help," I repeated, my head spinning. "You think I'm just going to help you after everything you've done?" Park smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was calculated, cold, and it made my skin crawl. "You don't have a choice, Lisa." He stepped forward, his voice dropping to a low, threatening tone. "You're in this whether you want to be or not." I felt a chill run down my spine as he spoke. I could see the fear in Elena's eyes now, too. This wasn't just a mission. This was a trap. And we had walked right into it. Before I could react, Park turned and gestured to the computer screens. "You'll see soon enough," he said. "There's no going back now." The screen flickered to life, and I saw something I wasn't prepared for. The image on the monitor was of me, a live feed from the cameras we didn't know were there. The truth was staring back at me, but it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everything I thought I knew, and everything I was about to lose. To be continued. Stay tuned for the next chapter. Subscribe to the channel and don't miss out on what happens next. The truth we're all hiding. The moment the screen flickered to life, my stomach dropped. I knew something was wrong, but seeing the live feed of myself on the monitor being watched without my knowledge was more than I could process. It felt like a betrayal. It felt like I was no longer just a participant in this game. I was its subject. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper as I stared at the screen. My own face was illuminated by the cold light of the monitor, a version of me that I barely recognized. I had been under surveillance from the very beginning. Park stood in front of me, his cold, calculating gaze fixed on the screen. His posture was perfect, unmoving, like a statue. "We've been watching you, Lisa. Every move you've made since you arrived." His voice was steady, like he was telling me the weather forecast. "You think you're playing a game, but you're just a pawn." I felt Elena shift beside me, her presence a reminder that I wasn't in this alone. But even her calm demeanor couldn't mask the fear in her eyes. "What do you want from us?" I asked, my hands trembling at my sides. Park turned slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "You think we need your help, don't you? You're wrong. You've already helped. You just don't know it yet." The words didn't make sense, but I didn't have time to process them. The air felt thick with tension. I was beginning to realize that nothing was as it seemed. And this mission, this trip that had started as an investigation, was quickly turning into a nightmare. "You've been working for us all along, Lisa," Park continued, stepping closer. His voice was low, almost soothing, as if he were trying to calm a frightened animal. "You just didn't know it." I opened my mouth to protest, to demand an explanation, but nothing came out. I couldn't breathe. My head was spinning. I thought I was on the path to expose North Korea's secrets. Instead, I had become part of their plan, a pawn in their international chess game. Park's eyes softened, almost like he felt sorry for me. "You think this is about the truth?" he asked, shaking his head. "It's not about the truth. It's about control. And you've been part of it from the moment you set foot in this country." My heart skipped a beat. What did he mean by that? Was I complicit in something I hadn't even understood? "No," I whispered. "This can't be real." "Oh, it's real, Lisa," Park said, his voice firm now. "You want to get the truth, but the truth is something you can't handle. We've been testing you, just like everyone else. You've been a part of this world since you arrived, and now there's no going back." I turned to Elena for some kind of reassurance, but she was silent. She was staring at the screen, her face pale. Was she involved too? "Elena," I said, my voice desperate. What did he mean? But before Elena could answer, the door slammed open behind us, and more guards flooded into the room. I had a split second to react, but it was already too late. They moved with practiced precision, surrounding us. It felt like the walls were closing in. One of the guards stepped forward, his face expressionless as he addressed Park. "The next phase is ready," he said in a clipped tone. "They're waiting." Park's eyes flickered to the guards, then back to us. "The next phase," he repeated slowly, almost to himself. "Yes, it's time." I didn't understand what was happening. What was this next phase? What did they want from us? "Elena," I turned to her, but she was already walking toward the door. "Come on," she said quietly, her voice strained. "We don't have a choice. We have to go." I wanted to argue, but the guards were closing in. The helicopter. I remembered the noise, the escape that had almost been our salvation. It was no longer just an escape. It was a trap. And now we were caught in it. We were escorted out of the room and down a long, cold corridor. The lights flickered above us, casting eerie shadows that made the hallway feel even longer than it was. Every step felt like it was leading us further into the heart of darkness. And I realized too late that this was no longer about survival. This was about power. We were led into a large, sterile room, with screens lining the walls, each one showing a different view of North Korea's most secretive places, military bases, underground bunkers, and foreign embassies. I couldn't help but feel like I was being dragged deeper into something I didn't fully understand. Something bigger than me. "Welcome to the final stage of the game," Park's voice echoed through the room. "You're both important pieces, Lisa. Don't you see? You're the final step." I felt my stomach drop. What did he mean? Before I could respond, Park walked over to a large screen in the center of the room. With a few taps, the image on the screen shifted to a map. A map of North Korea's military installations, with highlighted areas marked in red. "This is where the real mission begins," Park said, his voice low, intense. "And you two are the ones who will lead us to the next phase." I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. The walls were too high, the doors too locked. We were trapped, and there was nowhere to go. Park turned back to us, a dark smile crossing his face. You've done everything we needed, Lisa. And now, you'll do one last thing. You'll help us take the final step. He gestured to the screen, where a red blinked ominously. You're going to give us everything you know. Every secret you've uncovered. And if you don't, you won't be leaving here alive. To be continued. Stay tuned for the next chapter. Subscribe to the channel for updates and to find out how Lisa and Elena navigate the final stage of their nightmare.